We're having a chat. Like, can't do anything till Becca. I gotta wait for her. Okay. We're just ready to start the meeting. All right. We'll call the meeting to order.
Welcome to Nixa City Hall. This video is going to provide you with an overview of how the City of Nixa conducts City Council meetings. We encourage everyone to attend and participate in City Council meetings. This is part of how democracy works at the local level, listening to the perspectives of subject matter experts, city residents, and other community members helps our elected leaders make more informed decisions. Before we start the meeting, let's review some of Council's rules of order. These rules help us make sure our meetings are orderly and efficient, while protecting the ability of everyone to have an opportunity to speak. Please be respectful of the person speaking and hold your own comments until it is your turn to speak. Presenters are invited by the council to provide information during the meeting to the council. These are informational presentations only, and nothing will be voted on at the time of the presentation. Presenters are not time limited. There are 2 times when all other visitors will be able to speak to council. The first is during the visitors section of the agenda, and the second is during any public hearing regarding an agenda item. During the visitors section, anyone may speak to council about any topic, whereas the public hearings regarding specific agenda items allow you to make comments for council to consider before they make a decision on that topic. Whether you wish to speak during any public hearing or the visitors section, the following rules of order will apply. 1. Only one person should speak at a time. Be respectful of the person speaking and wait to speak until it is your turn. 2. Anyone speaking must do so from the podium and speak into the microphone. 3. You must first state your name and provide your address in writing to the city clerk before beginning your comments. 4. All speakers will be given 5 minutes to make their comments to the council. The mayor or council may have additional questions for speakers after this 5-minute period. 5. All comments should be addressed to the mayor and council. 6. If you have questions about existing city processes, programs, or policies, or if you need assistance from staff on any issue, please contact City Hall during normal business hours and we'll be happy to assist you or answer any questions you may have at that time. The public hearing is designed to provide the public an opportunity to provide testimony and information to the mayor and council regarding the decisions they may be considering. Keep in mind this meeting will be recorded and live streamed with video and audio. Therefore, all comments relevant to this meeting must be spoken into a microphone, otherwise video viewers will not be able to hear you. In the case of a closed session or technical difficulties, some meetings or portions of meetings may not actually be recorded or streamed. The use of cell phones during council meetings is discouraged, so please silence all devices now. Thank you for watching, and thank you for engaging with the City of Nixa. The meeting will begin shortly.
Sean Lucas.
Here.
Justin Orff.
Here.
Jared Giddens.
Here.
Aaron Peterson.
Here.
Darlene Graham.
Here.
Amy Hoekstra.
Here.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will move on to the consent agenda. Would anyone like to remove any items from the consent agenda? Nope. Seeing none, I'll accept a motion to approve.
So made. Second.
Roll call, please.
Justin Orff.
Yes.
Jared Giddens.
Yes.
Aaron Peterson.
Yes.
Darlene Graham.
Yes.
Amy Hoekstra.
Yes.
Sean Lucas.
Yes.
All right, move on to our service awards. Rob Steiner, 5 years in the police department. Oh, pictures, I like, that's a nice one.
Nice touch, huh? Mayor Council, Sergeant Sainer has been with us for 5 years. In that time, he's been a field training officer, a patrol corporal, and most recently a patrol sergeant. He is currently serving in our operations division. He is also a certified crisis intervention officer, and he's able to teach that. He is a certified crisis negotiator. He is also one of our Type 2 officers who handle our inspection and maintenance of our breath testing instruments, and he also teaches those classes as well. And finally, he's a taser instructor. Since his time with the police department, he's grown quite a bit, and he did come to us with some prior experience, so we were grateful for that. But he's moved up through the department rather quickly, so he's one of our rising stars, so to speak. And we're looking forward to have him for many more years.
Congratulations. Yeah. Oh, didn't you get a picture thing? You gotta. We'll move on to our special service presentation for the evening. The retirement recognition for Barb Blevins, 26 years. Jennifer.
Good evening. Barbara Blevins began her career in the finance department with the city of Nixa on February 5th, 1996, as an accounting clerk. She was then promoted to lead accounting clerk in 2006 and assistant finance director in 2017. She retired on June 30th of 2022, her career spanning 26 years and almost 5 months. During her employment with the city, she served on the Employee Think Tank Committee, the Helping from the Heart Committee, and most importantly, I'm told, she was the winner of the prestigious Ugly Christmas Sweater contest one year. I heard that was quite a deal. Back when Barb started with the city, the population of Nixa was around 5,000, and this year our population is just over 24,000. So as you can imagine, Barb has weathered lots of changes that accompanies that kind of growth. Organizational change can be difficult for staff, yet Barb has always remained a steady, positive influence and an important source of institutional knowledge, rolling with the punches and accepting new challenges willingly with professionalism and grace. She has taken care of the general ledger of the city of Nixa for over 20 years, always ensuring the accuracy of the numbers and balancing each account to the penny. Barb has been a consistent and steadfast employee with the highest standards of ethics and trustworthiness throughout her career. On a personal note, I could not have transitioned into my role as Director of Finance so smoothly without the depth and breadth of knowledge that Barb has, both in the City of Nixa's systems and in the history of the organization. There are many cogs in the wheel that keep the City of Nixa moving forward, and there is a lot of behind-the-scenes work that goes on to make us successful in serving our citizens. This work cannot be done without employees like Barb, loyal, hardworking, and conscientious. So tonight I would like to recognize Barb and thank her for her 26-plus years of dedicated service to the City of Nixa and to congratulate her on her well-deserved retirement.
Yeah.
Deep breath. Oh. I passed out the last time. I'm feeling a little better today. I think Barb was one of the first people I met when I came on city council, and the only person sitting down here except Doug, who was in the same position that they are now. She was always a great help to her and Donna to answer all of my millions and millions of spreadsheet questions, and I really appreciate all she has done for the city over these 26 years. All right, we'll move on to our proclamation. I'll try not to pass out this time. Whereas 15,000 children, the ages of birth through 19 years old, are diagnosed with cancer each year, and the average age of a child diagnosed with cancer is 8 years old, And whereas although pediatric cancer death rates have dropped by nearly 70% over the last 40 years, it is still the leading cause of death in children. And whereas causes of most pediatric cancers remain unknown and there are no widely recommended screening tests to look for cancer in children who are not at increased risk. And whereas the most common types of childhood cancer include leukemia, brain cancer, and lymphoma. And whereas there are many nonprofit organizations at the local and national level that are helping children with cancer and their families cope through educational, emotional, and financial support. And whereas we remember those who have lost their lives to cancer far too young and honor those courageous children who bring unwavering strength and optimism to their fight for cancer every single day. And whereas throughout this month, we take the opportunity to thank the many dedicated healthcare professionals, organizations, and parent advocate groups that support childhood cancer patients and families by offering advice, encouragement, hope, and financial assistance, and that work tirelessly to lift the spirits of children suffering from cancer. Therefore now, I, Brian Steele, Mayor for the City of Nixa, do proclaim the month of September 2022 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And we invited Kendall and Thatcher to accept this proclamation, but they weren't able to make it. So we will pass that on to them on behalf of St. Jude's. And we'll move on to our visitor section.
Jeff Belcher.
My name is Jeff Belcher. I'm from Nixa, Missouri. First off, Mayor, I actually agree with you on this proclamation. It's been my pleasure and honor in the last 18 months to come in contact with a family, and they've grown kind of close. It's a 5-year-old little girl. She's beautiful, and it does hurt. It's a bad deal. So hopefully, maybe we could do something as a city to, work on that, make things easier for those parents. On that note, I'm going to not be so pleasant here now. There's a word I think that goes synonymous with city council, and I believe it would be integrity, and I don't think anybody on that board would disagree with me. Amy, we told you it's coming. You've made the statement many times you're available anywhere, anytime for the citizens of Nixa. That proved to be a lie last night. You sent your minion out instead. You preach all this inclusion and diversity, yet you're hosting events private events and excluding the other children that are going back to school as well. How is that inclusive? Doesn't seem very inclusive. It doesn't have to be about the city. I can speak about anything I wish in this 5 minutes. It's about you sitting in that position that you don't deserve. It's been through the grapevine here that you've been asked to resign your position. And yet, one of the first things you did was rant and rave and rail on me in my campaign to get the mayor recalled due to the taxpayer expense of a special election. Yet you're refusing and you're going to do the same thing. A little hypocritical. It's called talking out both sides of your mouth. Again, one of your posts on Facebook yesterday, and I think that's a lot of your problem is you put all this stuff out on Facebook. You're targeting yourself. You're targeting your groups. You're targeting 5 to 11-year-olds at this point. One of your comments was that this particular conversation was so full of hate and vitriol, when all it was people expressing a different opinion than yours. You didn't agree. And I'll give you an example. I drove by, thought been gone all weekend fishing, thought maybe caught wind of it on my way back town that this event was going on. I come back up through and saw that you'd mentioned there was a protest scheduled, to the point that you had to notify all the attendees and warn them of all the hate and vitriol that was going to be attending your event. Well, me being me, I thought, you know what, there's going to be 2 points of view there. I will go and support my point of view. I'm allowed opposing views. There's nothing wrong with that. A simple discussion. I tried to initiate with you yesterday. You didn't want it. I tried to present it in the most respectful way that I could. I didn't want to interrupt your event. I waited until you came outside the fence with your, I don't know, bodyguards, whatever they were out there. Excuse me. And you'd preferred, instead of dealing with it yourself, you'd prefer to hand it off to a buddy, which is fine. We had a great 45-minute conversation. It wasn't full of hate. Was no vitriol whatsoever. In fact, at the end of the 45 minutes, we made plans to carry on the discussion at a later time because it was getting late. Both our wives were ready to go, so that means it's time to go. Unfortunately, we didn't exchange contact information. We both wanted to kind of get our last word in, but tonight, we're both in attendance. We were able to make that happen. So conversations like that are pretty important. You can't really squeeze it into a 5-minute time frame. But when you come out and you claim that, you know, the city is full of hate and vitriol because they don't agree with your views, that's egregious. We're all allowed to have our views. And as far as, you know, you're putting targets on these people's back. The Denise that came and spoke, I think during the Pride Proclamation, said she doesn't appreciate you bringing all this attention to those people. You're basically targeting them. You're putting targets on their back. Maybe just let people live. Gay, straight, whatever, who cares? We're all people. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you're bi. I don't care if you're trans. What I care about is when you're preaching this stuff to 5 and to 11-year-old children. There's a reason that children can't vote. There's a reason that children can't get tattoos. My time is up.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher.
Ron Sanders.
Good evening. My name is Ron Sanders. I live here in Nixa. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for the proclamation about cancer. It's one of those things that's near and dear to my heart. I can tell you that it does change your life. It changes the outlook, changes how you see everything. It changes the importance of everything that you do and everything that you experience. I encourage everybody that can hear me and that can see this to open your heart and help somebody, or just tell somebody, you know, they're loved, especially if they're going through cancer, if they're going through something so traumatic and sometimes life-ending. So, yeah, I'd really like everybody to take a few minutes and think about that, and maybe do that whenever the time comes. Also like to say, this podium in the city of Nixa is one of the most prestigious places to come here and speak, to speak your mind, to let the city, the representatives, as well as the whole city know how you feel about subjects, especially subjects that the city is involved in. Thank you for keeping it open. Thank you for making sure that it stays civil. That's very important to me, because the best thing for bad speech or speech that we disagree with is more speech, is your chance to counter those bad ideas or counter those things that you heard that you may not like. You get to speak out and you get to have your turn to say things. Just keep it civil. Tonight I wanted to talk about accountability. One of the most important jobs that the city has, especially the city council, is accountability. And as a part of that accountability is to make sure that we're watching everything that happens and making sure that everybody's acting in the best interest of the city and of the citizens. Has anybody driven down Gregg Road lately? A couple people have? Yeah, a couple people have. I don't know what's in that contract. I don't know if there's any way that we can get our money back. But I think that somebody needs to have a little bit of accountability on the people that created that monstrosity, because it has more bumps in it now than it did before. It's not smooth at all. It looks like it has a ripple effect all the way down it, creaks and cracks. And it's starting to smooth out with the travel. But
That's just one example of how the city council and the city can hold people accountable, is to follow up and take a look around and see what these contracts have garnered us. And I'll tell you what, however many hundreds of thousands of dollars we paid that company to do that job, it all needs to be taken back, because it all needs to be scraped up and it all needs to be redone. And that's just one example. I know that we've had some really good stuff happen. We've had some good contractors come in here and do it. But we have to see the accountability whenever things don't go right as well. We have to see it. It has to be in public. It has to be aired out. It has to be publicized. Hey, we found somebody that screwed up. They left a ladder or something in a manhole and flooded a guy's basement. We need to be held accountable, and we need to make sure that the person is made whole. These people are made whole. And everybody that lives on Gregg Road is now going to have to deal with that bumpy ride to and from work, to and from wherever they're going, because it's a monstrosity. It really is. Yeah, I think that two kids in a go-kart probably could have done better pulling a machine down the road. But as far as accountability goes, though, the buck has to stop right here. And we need to talk about it. Yeah, y'all need to talk amongst each other a lot more whenever it comes to issues. Bring it up from the days. Get your words together and speak about things that are very important to the city. I went to the school board meeting. Everything's all done behind closed doors. Everything's all smiles and happiness. We do an agenda. Everybody votes on like 10 things all at once, and that's it. You don't hear anything else but a whole bunch of congratulations. Here, we don't do that. Here, we need to make sure that we bring the accountability along with everything else that we do and set the better example. Thank you.
Mr. Sanders. Doug, I don't know if you or Jeff want to explain the micro seal process on Gregg Road. It's kind of, like Jennifer was saying, we do talk about these things, and we do go and find out. That looked a little odd to me too, so I requested information from Doug and Jeff on what the process was and kind of why it is that way, and so Doug will explain it to us now.
I'm not sure I can completely explain why this one turns out rougher than it has in the past. We have used this micro seal for quite a few years, 6, 7, 8 years now. And what it is, it's a seal coat. It's not a mill or an overlay. It's a coat that goes over the top of the existing asphalt to buy another 8 to 10 years before we have to actually mill it and overlay it. For some reason, this one is rougher. As Mr. Sanders said, it's starting to smooth out now that we've got some traffic on it, and I think it'll smooth out a lot better. But I can't answer you as far as why it's like it is. I honestly don't know. Jeff, do you know why it's rough? So.
Mayor, Council, I believe part of the issue with this product was there is slightly larger aggregate in it. This is done to aid in skid resistance. Over time, asphalt becomes smoother and smoother, so you lose part of that. So that is part of that reason why it may seem a little bit rougher. As Doug mentioned, it will, as traffic goes over it, smooth out more and more and more through time.
Thank you both. What you got next?
Elizabeth Dudash-Buskirk.
That's correct. Thank you. Elizabeth Dudash-Buskirk, 1227 Verna Lane. Some of you may have driven by it a few times because I live just off of Gregg Road myself. I only want to respond to what Mr. Belcher had said earlier about an event that I attended last night. The Glow Center in Springfield has been a place for many of my students at MSU and people I know to go when they feel that they are left out, marginalized, don't belong, or are told that they are too different to be with the people that are normal. It has provided events, safety. It has provided for people in Springfield for a long time, since I've been here, so 2006, and probably, I assume before that. It is one of those things that I wish I could have been more involved with, being at MSU, but I didn't have the time, and I am so grateful to people like Amy and others, friends of mine who have served in the Glow Center as part of their administration, as volunteers, they still do, participating in events, donating money to the AIDS Foundation and other things that Glow Center raises money for. The fact that Amy was willing to bring this same inclusion and safe experience for people here, for children in Nixa who feel the way that they do, makes me pretty proud to have someone like that on our city council. And you know my struggle with being here in Nixa. It's been a hard adjustment for me coming from, I don't want to say liberal places, but places that think differently, subcultures that are slightly different. Last night was a good event. It was a private event, no different than if I had rented out the pool for a party for my daughter. Amy answered Mr. Belcher when he asked her questions, and that quote-unquote minion that Mr. Belcher refers to is the same person he refers to as being here tonight and ready to have a conversation with. That minion invited Mr. Belcher to conversation, to say, let's talk about this, because Amy was in charge of the event that was happening and she needed to get back inside to be there for that event. There's no preaching going on to these children. You can't teach someone to be gay any more than you can teach me to be straight. When I was in kindergarten, my first kiss was with Roman Morocco. We're very Italian where I come from. I was in kindergarten, and when I tell people that story, they're like, oh, that is so cute, that is so sweet. Nobody ever says, well, why didn't you kiss a girl? But when my friend, who in kindergarten, I did not meet him until we were in our mid-20s, but when he told me that when he was in kindergarten, he knew that he was queer. And he struggled for a good majority of the late 80s and 90s with that problem. And maybe if people thought that his story was cute and adorable, he wouldn't be dead. He died by suicide not long after leaving the safety of a university and being out doing his job. And he was criticized for who he was. Seeing the children swim and play last night was fantastic. A former student of mine came to me with her child, who I hadn't seen since she was 2. He is now 10, and one of the bravest kids I've ever seen. And I'm proud of my student for the way that she raised him, and I'm proud of her husband for the way that he's accepted it, ex-husband, excuse me, and I'm proud for the fact that at some point in my life, I was able to impact that and to say to Sam, that's great, you look good, you grew up well. I don't know why we're coming in here. I'm not going to critique or chastise anyone for speaking their thoughts and their opinions into this microphone, but I sure as heck am going to remind us of something very important. The people of this city voted for something, and we should not overturn the will of the people because our opinions differ. The vote has got to matter. And we elected you, and you make the policies. And I hope we can remember that. It's the most important form of communication in a democracy.
Thank you, Dr. Buskirk.
Jeremy Hayes.
Yes, my name is Jeremy Hayes. I came here and I wanted to thank the council for the proclamation on cancer in children. I've seen the work you guys done over the last couple months, especially around the kids. You know, proclamation in June, the Parks Department, all these things that we're doing to support our kids. It's a tough time. It's a really tough time. And seeing the statistics and seeing how just supportive adults and people present makes a big difference. And I was just here to thank you and, again, encourage you to continue on with that. But I do need to speak a little bit about Mr. Belcher's comments. I do believe that this is city government, and we should be talking about city things. And the things that he was speaking was not city-related. And I'm sorry if he thought I was the minion that when he asked the question, I agreed to go and talk to him because I thought it was important, because that's how we as citizens communicate. We can have discussions. We can have one-on-one. We can have small groups. And I believe that's very important. So important that even though I think he misrepresented it, I will continue to communicate with him outside of this place. And I was disappointed that some of the things he told me last night, he hasn't held up on that end of the bargain a little bit tonight. So I am disappointed. But again, I will have those discussions with him in a private environment where it does matter. That's not for you guys, has nothing to do with you or the city government. But again, I want to thank you for your work, for trying to better the city, for making it inclusive, for supporting the kids, because it is important. And I know it's a lot of work, and I know you guys spend a lot of time here and back-to-back weeks. That's tough. I feel it, and I don't put in near the time you do. So again, thank you very much. I support you guys.
Thank you very much.
Eric Albers.
Thank you, Mr. Albert. All right, that is the end of our visitor section. We will move on to our second readings.
Second reading, Council Bill number 2022-081, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa granting special use permit 22-003 to authorize a short-term residential rental use for the single-family zone property located at 876 East Scott Wayne Drive.
Mayor, Council, good evening. The property owner of a single-family residential dwelling at 876 East Scott Wayne Drive has applied for a special use permit in order to operate a short-term residential rental. The City of Nixa defines a short-term residential rental as the renting of an entire dwelling or any portion thereof for a period of not more than 30 consecutive days to overnight guests where the owner is engaged in contract for the rental of that specific dwelling or any portion thereof. A short-term residential rental may only be permitted to a permanent resident for a principal residential structure on the subject property. The City of Nixa defines a permanent resident as a property owner or leasee who maintains a dwelling as a primary residence as documented by 2 of the 5 documents, motor vehicle registration, driver's license, voter registration, tax return, or utility bill. The applicant in this case has applied a motor vehicle registration and a voter identification card with their name and 876 East Scott Wayne Drive on it. Other requirements is that it must be located in a residential zone district and must be 150 feet away from another approved short-term residential rental. This property is located in a R1 single-family residential zone neighborhood, and it's also, there are no other approved short-term rentals in this neighborhood. At the August Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, a public hearing was held for this agenda item. 3 residents of the neighborhood approached the commission to voice their concerns about the safety and welfare of the neighborhood by allowing additional people into the neighborhood. In addition to that, the Planning and Zoning Commissioners would also like to revisit the ordinance to possibly make some changes. With all things considered, the commission voted unanimously to recommend approval to City Council, and staff recommends approval. And if you have any questions, I'll answer them.
Any questions? Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
We will open up the public hearing. And close the public hearing. Any further discussion?
No.
I think there are several things that have come up, the issue with people renting just more than 1 month. I've seen that in several cases where they can avoid the ordinance altogether. And, yeah, some of the other elements, I know that the commissioners have some questions on, so I think that'd be a great thing to take to the committee and or the commission, have them review that and bring us back their thoughts on that particular thing. Anything else? All right, motion to approve.
So made.
Second.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Amy Hoekstra,
Yes.
Sean Lucas,
Yes.
Justin Orff.
Yes.
Second reading Council Bill number 2022-082, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa, amending Chapter 2, Article 1 of the Nixa City Code by readopting Section 2-4 as authorized by Section 105.485 RSMO for the purpose of establishing provisions related to conflicts of interest and financial disclosure.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm before you again to present Council Bill 2022-082. We had first reading on this bill at the August 15th meeting. I provided a presentation at that time. I'm not going to go back over that, just summarize some of the information that was contained in there. The city is required by state law to readopt its financial disclosure ordinance every 2 years if the council desires to be governed by a financial disclosure ordinance. This bill tonight, should the council elect to adopt it, the city's financial disclosure requirements for the next 2 years will be governed by the ordinance, which requires the filing of what's called the short form disclosure document. And the enforcement of these requirements will be left to the council or through the normal municipal ordinance prosecution process. If the council elects to forego the adoption of the bill, the city would instead be governed by the financial disclosure statutes that are applicable to the city, which would require the filing of the long form disclosure document, and those requirements would then be enforced by the Missouri Ethics Commission. I'm happy to answer any questions the council may have about this, or take any direction that the council may have.
Any questions? Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
And we will open up the public hearing on this item. And we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? So if you want to go to the state using the MEC rules, you would vote no on this, or, yeah, we would have a first and a second, we would vote no, and then Nick would bring back an ordinance to make the changes necessary for the ordinance, correct?
Well, yeah, if council doesn't adopt this ordinance, then we'll bring an ordinance in the future to repeal the provisions out of the code, because those will still be effective.
Right.
I would think since none of us are truly experts in everything MEC, we should probably let them govern it and not us. That's just my, as much as I love filling out long forms.
Yeah. More paperwork, but
But-
yes, so.
I mean, because I'd kick Justin out right now, just for grins.
Any other discussion? Okay. Motion to approve.
So made.
Second.
Roll call. I guess we could have just let it die, but this
That
works
works
too.
too.
Whichever works, either way.
Aaron Peterson,
No.
Darlene Graham,
No.
Amy Hoekstra,
No.
Sean Lucas,
No.
Justin Orff,
No.
Jared Giddens.
No.
Okay. And then we'll bring back the other at the next meeting. All right, move on to the next one.
Second reading Council Bill number 2022-083, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa establishing and levying taxes on the real property in the city for the 2022 tax year. So this is our annual ordinance to set the tax levy for the year. To be able to set that tax levy, we have to post legal notice of the public hearing, hold the public hearing, and pass an ordinance. Deadline for certification for this tax levy is August 31st. If you pass this ordinance tonight, I'll send all the required documents to the county.
Any questions? Thank you. We will open up the public hearing. If you would like to speak to this item. Mr. Belcher.
Jeff Belcher, Nixa, Missouri. I don't know that this is the best idea to lump all these things together like this. Our parks are a disaster as they are. I hate to say it and hate to be brutal, but they are. We don't have adequate parking. We don't have adequate
I think you mean
seating.
to speak on the next item. This is property tax. So this is like an annual property tax we've had.
Oh, this wasn't the law enforcement tax.
Since the 70s, yeah. So,
Hold that thought.
okay. No problem, Mr. Belcher. And we'll leave the public hearing open.
Just a quick question on this particular one. And since I agree that taxes are theft, what would happen if everybody voted no on this one?
We would probably remove every open personnel request that the city had. It's about $600,000, so when we say that the police department their budget is about 3.7 million, and we get 3.3 million in sales tax. If we remove this, this is the tax that fills that gap. So we would probably get rid of all the current personnel recs that we have for maintenance personnel at the parks, for policemen. That's probably the majority of where it would come from.
Thank you.
And we'll leave the public hearing open. I didn't ask Jimmy that, but that's what I would advise Jimmy to do. We will close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Amy Hookstrat,
Yes.
Sean Lucas,
Yes.
Justin Orff,
Yes.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson.
Yes.
Second reading, Council Bill number 2022-084, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa amending the 2022 annual budget to appropriate funds for the hotel market and financial feasibility study.
Mayor, Council, again before you tonight is the budget amendment to partner with Show Me Christian County, the City of Ozark, and Christian County itself to conduct a feasibility study for a hotel marketing study, which would look at 2 locations that we have selected inside the city of Nixa. They would look at that surrounding area of that location. We have picked one south and one north for them to evaluate. They'll look at, as you can see in the memo, they're going to look at things like the economic demographics. They're going to look at the corridor profiles, so they'll look at the transportation in the area to see if it would support a hotel or a motel. They're also going to do a market analysis and make some recommendations. For example, if a hotel were to come develop in the city of Nixa, it would give them some information on what the room cost would need to be to make that sustainable, how many rooms they would have to be able to rent out daily to make that sustainable and that type of thing. Again, this is something that we're asked for regularly from potential developers in the hotel and motel market. It is a standard for a lot of times for communities to provide this information to those developers. I'll also mention that, as I mentioned last time, that we were looking at potentially budgeting this in next year's budget, but Show Me Christian County offered this partnership with the City of Ozark and Christian County. Typically, the study, as you can see, runs about $39,000. Our portion of that would be about $13,000. So staff's recommendation is for council to consider approving the budget amendment, allowing us to move forward with the study. I'll just make one more comment real quick, and that is that if we do approve, if council approves the budget amendment, I will be bringing back an IGA, intergovernmental agreement with the City of Ozark, Christian County, and Show Me Christian County as well for approval in the future. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Has Ozark or the county voted on this yet?
They have not. I know they're supposed to take it to, I'm going to misspeak if I tell you what night it goes to Ozark. I'm not sure if it's this week or next week. It has went to county, and I did go speak to the commissioners about this, but they have not voted yet. It's got to come back for another meeting. Yep. But I can tell you the 2 commissioners that were present were very favorable of the partnership.
So you have two sites kind of identified. Can you tell us where those are?
At this point, I would prefer not to, because of the landowners would like to keep those quiet at this point. But because we have spoken with the people that own the land, and they're just not ready to make anything, they won't talk about it
I
publicly.
was just curious, because I know someone who was talking about doing something like that, but they didn't say
Sure.
where.
But I will say, there, like I said, there is one south and one north, that will make sure that we pick two different areas in town.
Okay, thank you.
But I will also mention they also look at that area, so it's not necessarily just that property owner.
Right.
This is something they look at that would benefit the whole area,
Right.
so. All right,
Thank you, Jimmy.
thank you.
And we'll open up the public hearing.
Just that one thing that just won't go away. My name is Ron Sanders, and I live here in Nixa. Smells of desperation, kind of. Seeing it from the outside, always thought that big corporations and all these places, all these private industries that put hotels and motels and put commercial buildings and stuff like that into places, they do all of this. You know, they have teams that go out and they evaluate everything. They kind of know what the values are. They spend their money figuring out where they want to go. They, you know, now it smells like we're desperate to get them here, and we're going to spend our money to get them here. And then the government's going to pick the locations, you know, where these hotels are going to be set up. Just looking at it from the outside, that's what it looks like to me. It looks like, hey, we're desperate for more hotels and motels, so we're going to spend the government's money, and we're going to go out and find locations for them, and we're going to tell them where they can set up the hotel. If you guys can't see how that looks from my angle, I don't know how else to explain it. But it doesn't look like private industry's doing what it's supposed to do, and it doesn't look like government's really doing what it's supposed to do. It looks like the government's spending all of its money to garner favor for the private industry, you know, and, you know, hey, we're going to do all the demographic work. We're going to do all the legwork for you. We're going to spend all the people's money so that you can come down here and build a building and, you know, have a hotel so that you can start taking some of their money too, instead of them doing all of this themselves. I don't know. That's just the way it looks from the outside. And it seems like the more I'm here, the more I see these little contracts come through here for all of these little things. And little things do add up to a lot of money sometimes. And sometimes it makes the city look like it's ripe for being taken advantage of in negotiations because you're desperate for, you know, for people to come in and, you know, do business with you. That's just my take.
I think Ms. Hazeltine from the Show Me Christian County explained at the last meeting that this is the standard practice for all tourism agencies. Greene County and the Springfield Board of Tourism does this. Branson Board of Tourism does this. Every major city and area provides that. It's what is expected, which is maybe not good from those private businesses, but we all live in the real world, and so we have to do what we have to do what we need to do to put our best foot forward to attract those businesses that we need to have here in town. We'll leave the public hearing open.
Jeff Belcher, Nixa, Missouri. I'm going to reiterate what Ron kind of hit on there, that, you know, private business is private business. It doesn't get any plainer than that. Private's private. Who are we to authorize, delegate our city tax money to help them or boost them to make sure they're going to be in a prime location or a prime business to help ensure they succeed? You know, I started my own business back in 2004, I believe it was, back in Kansas City, doing electrical contracting. I didn't have no government agency paying for feasibility studies and client searches and land locations and all that stuff to help ensure we're going to be profitable, make sure it's going to be good for everybody. It's called risk reward. If you want to step out and go into private business, it's a risk. You better have your ducks in a row. I don't see what we'd stand to gain boosting these private companies. Are they going to offer kickbacks to the city other than sales tax? Are they going to repay this funds that, you know, hey, we did this study for you. You know, it worked out good in your favor. You got a successful private business now. You need to pay back the government money that kind of helped you get that boost to ensure you make that jump to pick this location here. Where's the risk? It's not out of their pocket. I mean, you know, you say you need businesses in town. Well, shit, I'll open I'll open up a business. Shoot, I'll open a business. How much are you willing to give me to do some feasibility studies and do this and do that to ensure that I'm profitable? Anything? 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 100,000? But it's my private business. Doesn't the city government have to help me out to make sure it's viable and feasible for I invest my money into something that's going to go belly up? There's a reason it's called private business, people. There's ways we can bring businesses to town without holding their hands, without laying the groundwork for them, without spending tax dollars, monies, crossing our fingers, hoping, you know what, well, I hope they come. That's a risk in itself. That's just my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher.
You know, one of the things we learned a few years ago at a workshop in a town that used to be much smaller than Nixa was the fact that they took a very proactive stance in that they decided to have things ready for businesses to move into. So when they set up all this stuff, so if someone came to town and said, we want to build this, they said, we have a perfect location for you right here, or we have one here, or we have one here. Let them make the choice, but they had it ready to go so people didn't have to go, well, maybe it'll work here, maybe it'll work here. And that little town has boomed since then because they had the foresight to plan ahead. And I think that's what this is wanting us to do, is get a chance to look at it and go, let's find out what might be a best place to have somebody come in and build a hotel or build this or build that, because they're more likely to do that if we've got something set up for them already to go. That's just my thoughts on it.
And we'll leave open public hearing. Mr. Russell.
I want to weigh in on this, and I can appreciate what Mr. Sanders and Mr. Belcher are saying about, you know, just being careful with, you know, how we use this. But I got to tell you something. Every single day, every single weekend, there are tons and tons of families that travel into the Nixa area. And they need a place to stay. And we have limited Airbnbs. We've had that discussion, of course. And we have one hotel room that normally gets usually filled up with local contractors. I know that I've visited with them and a few baseball teams. And then yet what happens is these people that come in and they want to visit family. They want to visit friends. And so where do they have to stay if somebody doesn't have enough room? Well, then they have to go back to Springfield or some other location to spend the night. And we're losing that traffic each and every day. I can tell you right now, for $13,000, if we have a chance of identifying a location that can bring in something amazing, such as maybe even a small convention center where we can keep some of our small conventions here in Nixa, like our Nixa Education Foundation Gala, or maybe the Nixies, where we always have to travel outside the city to celebrate our own town. If we can even have a chance of partnering with Ozark and Show Me Christian County so that as we see people on the internet all the time going, why doesn't Nixa be more proactive in creating additional, you know, businesses in Nixa? Why aren't they bringing in Chick-fil-A? I mean, some of the biggest requests we get are those crazy ones, and of course, more parks and more walking trails. And that's another one. And then, so this is an opportunity for us to finally say, hey, we can go out and actually shop for developers. It's not that easy. We have some challenges in our town, and if we can have a feasibility study that is ready to go, that we can be proactive when we have developers, or in some situations, we can actually mail to developers and send it to developers and say, hey, this is what we have to offer. And we partner with all of our other amenities and all the other things that we have that we take for granted sometimes in our community, such as the police and fire protection, our EMS protection. We take our quality of life. We take our lower cost of living. I wouldn't say low anymore, but it's lower as we continue to see inflation climb. But this is so important to the vital success of us maybe finally someday answering that question. Maybe we are not feasible for a hotel. Maybe we're not. I mean, it may come back going, yeah, Ozark's better. I mean, it just may come back and say that, but we don't know. But I can tell you, myself and several others that are an economic development in this town have had so many conversations with people who actually are in the business of creating hotels. Just last couple weeks ago, Cindy and I were touring Amazon with a whole bunch of leaders from around the area, and I happened to speak to a developer who actually does hotels, and he says, yeah, but where does it need to go? And we don't have an answer to that question. And so I'm glad that we can actually have an opportunity at a lower cost to truly figure out where this needs to go. And so I highly encourage, I appreciate what others have said about this, but this is really crucial to the future economic development of our community and answering some of those questions. Hey, Nixa, what are you doing to go and attract more business and more economic development to our town? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. And we'll leave open the public hearing. One more minute. And we will close the public hearing. You have something, Mr. Gibbs?
Yeah, so I will kind of take off my council hat for a second. And so my normal job is commercial title insurance, and so I deal with a lot of commercial developers and all over Missouri, Kansas, Arkansas. And one of the main questions that they ask is they want to know traffic counts, they want to know what area is available, and because word does travel, we have some sinkholes in Nixa. So they want to know property that's big enough to handle their type of development. And I know there's been a couple people from out of state that have came here just because I know the places that are easier to find that information, like traffic counts and things. And so, and Chris said the word attract, and that is, to me, the key word out of all of it. And developers look for places that want them. And it's kind of like hunting. I mean, if you go out hunting, you can go pick a tree and sit in it. You might get lucky. Something might go in front of you. Or you follow the trails, plant food plots. You do all sorts of things to attract the deer or turkey or whatever to your area. A lot better chance of getting something. Well, you know, obviously we didn't get as lucky to land a place like Amazon that just came in, that's where they picked, and there it was. So we have to do the extra work to attract new business. If we just sit here and wait and hope something comes along, because there's a lot of buzz about Southwest Missouri. I mean, every area around here, I mean, Nixa, I mean, even Springfield, everywhere is still growing. And they're just continuing to widen their borders because everyone just keeps growing. And it's not because everyone's just sitting on their hands. I mean, there are people that want to come here, and having information like this where they don't even have to reach out to us first. We can actively reach out to them and send them hospitality studies, traffic counts of certain areas that we would like development. Any additional tool that we can have in our tool bag to get more businesses in here, I think is going to be extremely beneficial. And it is a question that I get asked a lot, like how much information can you provide? Because yes, you know, like what Ron was saying, you know, Whataburger, they do have a team that goes out and identifies places, but not every business has that. And so anything we can do to help them, I feel like, is worth every penny to a certain amount. And being able to split this cost throughout the county is a lot better, I think. That's my 2 cents.
Mr. Giddens talked about Amazon just showing up. They didn't just show up. Republic built tens of millions of dollars worth of infrastructure for them to come in there.
It's like 15 years ago they built that?
About 10, yeah. So, but yeah, they got lucky on a lot of great things and worked out very well for them, and they were able to, but they invested that money into creating something that people would want, businesses would want to come to. Same thing with, I mean, I see Mr. Belcher, Mr. Sanders, and a lot of other people, and people probably sitting up here some too, that say, you know, why didn't we get a Whataburger? Why didn't we get that? Well, every bit of infrastructure at the Whataburger and Republic was paid for by the city. A large amount of the infrastructure for the Whataburger and Ozark is built by their transportation or neighborhood improvement district, whatever it's called, tax incremental financing, which is also government tax as well. So all of those things. So we say that we want these things, but we then say we don't want to spend any money to do them. Well, the two things don't work. You never, if you don't spend any money on economic development, and you don't spend any money building out infrastructure that businesses want, they're gonna go to the places that have. And so, so we can complain about not getting something, or we can invest in our community and create a place where people would want to bring their businesses and put in that infrastructure, put in those studies, put in whatever we need to, put in those experts like Mr. Russell and the folks at Show Me that we've put in over the last 10 years, and have those people available to them so that we can put our best foot forward and bring in Mr. Sanders' Steakhouse. Any other discussion? All right, I'll accept a motion to approve.
So made.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Amy Hoekstra,
Yes.
Sean Lucas,
Yes.
Justin Orr,
Yes.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham.
Yes.
Second reading, Council Bill number 2022-085, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa amending Chapter 12, Article 4 of the Nixa City Code by adding thereto a new section, Section 12-85, to allow for citywide garage sales.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As discussed at last week's meeting, this ordinance amends the code by adding a new section to allow for citywide garage sales, one in May and one in September. The amendment also exempts the citywide garage sales from the limit of the number of sales allowed in 12 months. Staff recommends approval. Any questions?
Any
Thank you.
questions? Thank you, Mr. Robbins. We will open up the public hearing. And close the public hearing. Any further discussion?
People are happy.
Motion to approve?
So made.
Second.
I'm gonna have a garage sale. He hadn't done garage sale in a long time. Roll call, please.
Who was taking that second?
Open the second.
Justin?
I'll do it.
Justin.
Sean Lucas,
Yes.
Justin Orr,
Yes.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham.
Yes.
Amy Hoekstra.
Yes.
Second reading, Council Bill number 2022-086, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Nixa calling an election to be held on November 8th, 2022, to submit to qualified voters the question of imposing an additional 1-cent general sales tax to fund public safety and recreation, and authorizing the city clerk to do all things necessary and convenient to submit said question to the qualified voters of the city, and providing for the enactment of said tax if approved.
All right. Mayor, Council, I'm going to give a brief overview tonight. I'm going to give you the full presentation again. I think we covered a lot last meeting. But obviously, in the end, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer anything that you might have. Tonight before you is the second reading of the ordinance to put the proposed tax initiative on the November ballot for a 1-cent general fund increase. Again, as we talked about the last meeting, Chief Campbell did a great job talking about the needs of the police department and the need for the additional officers. Again, I want to remind you, the last staffing study said we needed 11 officers now, and last year the budget afforded us none, so we weren't able to add any officers, even though there is the need today. Mr. Kraus, the Parks Director, did a fantastic job as well, talking about the parks needs and the facilities, as well as the fact that we only have one community center with one basketball court to serve a population of over 24,000 people now. It's just not sufficient. And we hear it all the time from members of the public, wanting more open gym space, wanting more opportunities for play and recreation, both basketball, volleyball, pickleball, all those type of things, again, is a need. And I'll just mention too, because I know there's been some talk about, and not to jump ahead, but Mr. Belcher did mention talking about the need for our current parks needing updated and some repairs. Absolutely, we do need some repairs in our current parks, and that's exactly why we're trying to find revenue sources to not only build new facilities for our public, but also take care of the things that we do have. It takes money and it takes revenue, and again, this is the type of things, unfortunately, that we have to consider to be able to keep up with the growth of the community. So before you tonight again is the proposal to put the 1-cent ballot, 1-cent initiative on November ballot to pay for Again, the additional officers that I mentioned last time, we will put in incrementally over the next several years to get where we need to be. And also the fantastic facility that Insight Design came up with, the design. They looked at our needs, came up with that design, and we presented that from the police department at the last meeting. And again, SAP Design did a fantastic job. They took into consideration all of our needs that we need for the recreational facilities, and they came up with a fantastic design for a sports center as well. Again, staff's recommendation would be to put it on the November ballot for the public to consider whether or not they want to approve a 1-cent sales tax to fund these things. And then I'll wrap up by asking Chris Russell, the President and CEO of the Nixa Chamber of Commerce, to come up and briefly talk about potential impact on our local businesses as well. And then, of course, myself, Chief Campbell, and Matt here to answer any questions you might have.
Kidding. We're going to make this brief
See if you can
today.
talk as fast as Anna.
Right. This is going to be really brief because I think it's very clear when you look at what the police can do for, police protection does for economic development. You know, an employer is not going to move into a community that doesn't have adequate police coverage, and our police department does by all means. However, as we continue to look at opportunities to grow, even in the current environment, I noticed our city sales tax is continuing to increase, but not at the rate that it needs to cover current inflation. But that does mean that people are being vocal for shopping local, and we do have new businesses establishing and coming to Nixa, and keeping up with the demand helps us with, you know, that economic development. Now, my job is not to tell you how to make that happen. I just know that it's very, very important. You know, another thing that when we talk about attracting employers, and I'm kind of covered some of this just in the recent conversation we had about the hotel study. You know, we look at what attracts employers, major players to a community. Well, one's infrastructure, right? We know we got to have that, and as Doug always says, sewer's not sexy, but it's vital, and it's probably the most sexy thing that we can actually offer. That's one. Two is expanded services in the city. So one of the things that the police does, which is sometimes can get overshadowed because of the demand that they have, because of the workload, is they have several people that are certified to do the things such as, you know, helping out churches to have security provided, helping out provide programs for, you know, apartment complexes to make sure that they are safe and adequate. And then also they go to business sometimes and do safety checks and those sort of things. I actually, when we bought the building at 902 West Mount Vernon, you know, I pulled a few strings and got them to come out and kind of give us some ideas on what we can do to make sure that that is a safe environment for not only our current staff that'll be there day to day, but when we do have additional people there for the visitor center, whether they're in the meeting room or space that we are having, you know, because we plan on having meetings at night, so we've upgraded our lighting based on, you know, the recommendations of Nixa PD. So economic development is about, employers are looking for those types of things. So police protection is an obvious one. The next one that we get a lot of requests on in our community, and I tried to pull them up here real quick because I just thought of it sitting back there. I had my notes here today. But you know, what's funny is that we have this new app called Experience Nixa. And I'm not here to plug that app, but we're a little over 52. Well, you can always download the Experience Nixa app. Just go to your favorite app store, the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. However, looking at the data, and we're really actually paying attention to this. And it's interesting is that we've added areas such as Ozark Parks and their trails, because let's face it, if you live in the Nixa area, you need to seek recreation outside of our community, right? And so that's something that we're very aware of. The Dickerson Park Zoo gets a ton of hits. The greenhouse, the bike trail down here gets a lot of hits. Busick gets a lot of hits. Stuff that's outside of our community. So our community is looking for expansion on that. And if employers are looking at coming into a community, they're going to be evaluating what our current environment is like. And if their employees do need to travel, that could affect our economic development. So those are things that we have to consider. And this isn't you guys have not actually voted on whether you're going to have this go through or be on the ballot or not. My board of directors will be meeting tomorrow to advise us how we want to move forward if you decide to do that. This is just stating the facts. This is what people want. This is the desires that they have, and this is how it can affect whether we are attracting employers to our community by the amount of amenities that we have. I will also tell you that, you know, we have, I think Matt told me one time, 9,000 plus kids on average per year that go through our program. I think it was something like that. Is it a little less or a little more? 7 or 8, let's just go. let's say it's 5,000, it doesn't matter. If it's 5,000 times 2 parents, 3 grandma and grandpas, keeping those sports programs in our community also helps with the Be Vocal for Shop Local initiative that we've all adopted and have also, it's out here on your wall or on the glass outside. And if we're not keeping up with that demand, and if our residents are having to do something different for recreation, we can't come up with a solution for that, Nixa, then we're going to continue to see that traffic, especially on the weekends, leave our community. The rec leagues are the rec leagues, and they're designed not to be that traveling baseball, but there's opportunities that if we can explore whatever avenue that looks like to continue to attract big-time activities to stay right here in Nixa, coupled with what the citizens have already voted on with the ATOS and the new stadium. I happened to be over there the other night during the Jamboree, and the updated turf, and we're still coming up with a name for it. The Eagletron, maybe? I don't know. We're still playing with that idea instead of Jumbotron. Those are all things that people are looking for. And so however you need to come up with a solution, we've got to keep up with the times. I know so many people who actually do travel the Republic just to go to the wave pool, right? Because we don't have adequate recreation. So we need to come up with a solution for that. That is going to keep business right here. It keeps our local restaurants, our local retail and dining establishments continuing to thrive. And hopefully at some point, when given the right opportunity, I'm telling you, big corporations will sometimes look at things and if we don't have certain things checked off, as you are well aware of, then they're not even going to come. And trust me, this city, this county, this chamber, we are fighting for economic development. We work all the time. I get so fascinated when I see people say that the city or we're not doing enough to try to attract business. We're trying. We have meetings at least once a month, and sometimes it's more than that because I'll run into Cindy here, I'll run into Jimmy there, I'm running into Show Me Christian County here. We're talking to the county about joint projects. We're talking to as many people as we possibly can. And just the other day I came into Jimmy and I said, dude, I just got a phone call. We got somebody looking for 8,000 square feet. I can't say what, but they're wanting, it would be awesome for Nixa if we could get it. We are looking for it. And then immediately our wheels go to turning and we start making phone calls. We call even you guys sometimes. So this city is constantly fighting. It's just we do have some obstacles. And so that's not always the solution, just saying, just go get more business and bring it to Nixa. We don't have to have something that's going to offset the current budget because that's not going to happen. Not yet. It might. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but it's a bigger challenge than people think. I wish, trust me, if I could open up a Chick-fil-A right here in Nixa, I would. I talked to Andy Kuntz personally just about it's been a year and a half, 2 years ago now. I said, man, let's get one in Nixa because Republic was launching theirs. He goes, I already have one in Nixa, and that's South Campbell. He already considers that his Nixa store. So with that said, guys, talking about economic development, talking about the impacts of parks, talking about the impact of police protection, talking about the impact of chambers and our small businesses, is there anything that I can answer for you tonight regarding the Chamber of Commerce and where this might take us? We good?
Any questions for Mr. Russell?
Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it. Yep, I got them all checked off.
Anything else, Jimmy?
No, just, if there's any questions, obviously I'm here, Matt's here, and Chief's here. I will mention that, I did put out the letter to the public, and Drew did include a survey at the bottom of that. If you would like to know the current results, I'd be happy to share those with you either now or later. But
sure.
We've had about 180 responses so far, 70% yes. So we are trying to make sure that we're getting the vibe and polling the public as well. And I've got lots of feedback from the public since that letter went out. Both majority, very honestly, very, very positive. Obviously there are some that have concerns, and we're answering any questions that anybody might have. So I would encourage, if you come across someone that has any questions, please encourage them to reach out because we want to make sure we're hearing everybody in our community as we move forward.
Any other questions? All right, we'll open up the public hearing.
Okay, I'm on the right page now. Jeff Belcher, Nixa, Missouri. I'm going to give you a break for a second. This economic development, how long have you been mayor?
This is my 9th year as mayor.
9 years. Have you been blind to the growth?
I'm sorry?
Have you been blind to the growth, the doubling of the population?
No.
It seems to me about every 10 years it's doubling.
Well, not quite double, but yeah.
And do we have any infrastructure in place to offer any of these businesses?
We have infrastructure for residential construction because the developers build the infrastructure when they come in and build those those projects.
Okay, and are we doing feasibility studies for them, or are they just buying land and saying, hey, I'm gonna develop this?
We have done feasibility studies in the past for residential growth as well.
Private developers
The
we
school also
have?
does a demographics and residential study every year as well.
Okay. Chick-fil-A, that would be awesome. Don't get me wrong, I love Chick-fil-A, but if you look at our traffic situation in Nixa, we've got basically 2 roads. Have you seen Glenstone at Chick-fil-A? Traffic's on Glenstone. Have you seen the Chick-fil-A at Sunshine and Campbell? Traffic clear the hell out on Sunshine, sometimes all the way to Campbell. Same thing in Branson. You got traffic out there in 76, people waiting in the drive-through lane. Where are we going to put those people? Chick-fil-A may be a little high on the rung for the infrastructure we have in place currently. Either that or you're going to have to put it off the beaten path, I think. Otherwise, you're just going to create more problems. And as far as this whole tax goes, my pulse from what I'm hearing is it's a big fat no. And the biggest complaint with that is because the 2 packages are lumped together. I think you'd have far better success and have a better feeling for what the city wants as the citizens is if you were to separate those 2 items out completely. The way I look at it is law enforcement, we're doubling our population every 10 years. That is a need. That is an absolute need. That is a must. If people don't feel safe, they're not going to be here. Businesses don't feel safe, they're not going to be here. If you don't have a brand new park, a wave pool, an indoor pool, I can deal with that. So basically, I think the problem is you're putting a want and a need and bundling it all together on the same vote. And I've got a feeling it's going to end up just like all the other park taxes that have been put up here recently, they get turned down. For law enforcement's sake, hopefully they pass it. Hopefully you guys can split it up. I think that one's got a good chance of passing, but I think the big dead weight on it is going to be the parks. And I'll kind of give you a quick analogy. I've got a neighbor kid, I'm paying to mow my grass $30 a week, and he only mows once every 3 months. Now, do we want to keep paying that kid $30 a week when he ain't mowing? He's not maintaining the facilities? He's dropping the ball, he's not showing up. I know we said we got bathroom repairs up there at Rotary Park. They're still disgusting. I still wouldn't take my dog in there. I take my grandson in there. He stands on the sink and pees because the toilets are a disaster. Absolute disaster. They're prison toilets. They're actually prison toilets. And they don't get maintained. It's deplorable, it's disgusting. And yet we want to spend millions more? What are we going to do to that property? I'd say let's clean house, make sure we can maintain what we have currently before we start going and asking the citizens to give us more money to let more stuff get run down. We just spent over $1 million up at the center, if I read that right. Did we spend $1 million fixing that drainage problem?
We spent $1 million to replace the park with a new inclusive park, yes.
And the playground equipment. And I understand there was a big drainage problem there too, because the whole thing was dug up for half the spring and summer. Bad timing, by the way. Where did that come from? The bad drainage all of a sudden, where did that develop?
It's been there a long time.
I believe that had been a problem for a long time. I mean, that park's over 25 years old, so.
Okay.
Problems.
Well, maybe it was a design flaw, potentially. You know, talking about the shoddy work out there, the road, it may fix itself out there on Gregg Road, maybe, maybe not. I'm noticing a lot of these sidewalks all up and down 14. I'm in construction. I see it every day. The finish edge they're putting on these concrete sidewalks out here looks like a kindergartner did them when they brush them. Looks like hell. Nothing's straight. They're crooked. They're wavy. You can see the waves in the front edge of the curb. It looks amateur. And I don't know how many times we've done them recently, but I know it's more than once. I would think after the first time they'd had enough practice to work the kinks out and put a presentable product on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher. And we'll open the public hearing.
Hello, okay, sure. Hello, Mayor. Hello, Council. I'm Sheila Michaels, Nixa resident, and I wanted to comment on the proposals for the tax. And I actually agree that we do need a lot of repairs in our parks and our facilities, and I think that we all know that. In the past couple of years, 2 to 3 years, there have been, a lot of ideas floating around how we need to support our police, we need to fund our police, we need to make sure our police force is taken care of, and this is our opportunity to do that. I think our police force does an amazing job. I love living here. I think it's very safe. I know a lot of my neighbors feel the same way, but of course they're overstretched. We need to support them. We need to do whatever we can. And as for parks and recreation not being a need, to kind of counter that, I've raised 2 kids in Nixa, and for families, especially young families, an accessible recreation area and parks, you do need that. Kids need to be out in the community. There needs to be things for people to do, to spend time together, to get to know their neighbors, to meet with other community members. If you don't have those community spaces, then community members never see each other. Maybe in the school drop line or at some school function, but you don't get to know people outside of your little bubble and your little school and your little neighborhood. So I think that recreation is very important. I think it's very important to health and well-being and to good living, and I think that supporting our police department is also very, very vital. So I am in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll leave open the public hearing.
Yeah, Jeremy Hayes, Nixa resident. First off, I was out of town last week, so I didn't get to see the whole presentation. I've been trying to catch up. I read your email and your post.
You'll have plenty of opportunities.
Yeah, yeah. So first off, I want to say I do support where you're going with this. Reading that, the general fund, what we're bringing in is not even really covering hardly what we're paying out. So if we want to do any improvements or even any major maintenance, we can't, and we're getting further and further behind. Seeing that we probably should have done this probably 10 years ago, and that we're trying to play catch up now. That's a hard place to be in, because not only are we trying to fix a problem, but also try to get ahead too. We're fighting against the Republics, the Ozarks, those kinds of people. So I understand that piece, and I understand where we're going. I support the additions to the police. I support the additions to the parks. Like other people have mentioned, parks are very important. They affect the families here, the working families, the ones that the employers are looking for. Where I look for a home, I want to be able to get to a park pretty easily. Having walking trails that connect the parks, doing those types of things are important. And so as we go forward, I would highly recommend that you point that out. The big flashy things, the big police station, the big news center, that's neat. But really what I want to know is, how's it going to affect me as a parent living in this area? I want to be able to get to it easily. I want to be able to walk and not have to get in the car every single time. I want my property values to go up because I'm connected to a park. Those types of things. The rec center, it's hugely important. It helps kids that don't have the ability to go travel, that are on the lower incomes, that have the ability to go do that. It's hugely important. And I know we talk about maybe some leagues will come here and do those types of things. That's, that'd be gravy on top. But really, that's not what's important. It's that the kids have a place to play, that we're not have this weird schedule that maybe you get an opportunity in one of these gyms once a week, maybe, we need places, and including senior citizens. We need places where senior citizens can go, and having facilities like this is important. Now, with all that being said, if you pass this and this goes to the place, I will vote yes, okay? But sometimes I'm in the minority here. I think it's very important. I think it's incredibly important as we move forward. But the one thing that does concern me is the 1%. We're going from 1.5, I believe, to 2.5. That's a pretty big increase. And I understand why we're doing that. I understand we're trying to play catch up and be ahead. But when you look at the comparisons of where we are today compared to our neighbors, where we're going to be when we look at our neighbors, the Republic's still at top, but then pretty much anyone that we look around here, we're above them. And that's concerning to me, because when I look around this community and I hear enough people that are concerned with taxes, I hear the state of economy with inflation and oil prices and things like that, it concerns me. I'd much rather have something pass where we get most of what we want than something not pass and we don't get anything. So I know you've done a lot of work, and I appreciate that. I would just recommend again that we've looked at all those options. Do we have, options where maybe we can do 0.75 right now and look at something in the future? Is there a way to push off something a year or two? I just don't want it to go down and fail, and then we have nothing, and we start from scratch. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll leave open the public hearing.
This is a tough one. My name is Ron Sanders. I live here in Nixa. Thank you for enduring a lot of challenging critique, especially of this, okay? I think that one of the things that we do as human beings is we try to sugarcoat things sometimes. We try to make things look pleasant, make things look nice. And to me, well, first of all, the police department that was in that picture, that was too nice. I think our police department should look a lot more like the Ozark High School, a little bit more like a prison and being a little bit ominous. I think that's what a police department should kind of look like. Let me just say that right off the bat. But I do support a police department worthy of, some ramparts and everything here. The parks, though, I think the parks was thrown into this in a combination of, putting a little bit of icing on top of the cake for economic development, for, making people happy about spending their money, about, hey, we're going to take your taxes, we're going to make you feel good about it because the government's going to give you a big hug and make you feel good by giving you a park to walk in and give you a field house to go shoot some basketballs in. The truth is, 70% of the people that work here work up in Springfield, maybe 68%. Nobody's challenged me on that number yet. And 27 or 28% of the people that have a job, they work at the schools. So that leaves 4 or 5% of the people to actually go enjoy these parks while everybody else is at work. Maybe 6%, I don't know. I'm just guessing with my percentages here, but I would challenge anybody to see how close I am with this. And as far as the tax base goes, I said it once before, and it's worth saying again because whenever it comes to economic development here in Nixa, the one cold hard fact that has not been spoken once in the past 2 meetings, except by me, is that 70% of your tax base drives up 160 and Nicholas Road 5 times a week and spends a lot of their money at lunchtime up there. Spends a lot of their money going to the stores up there on their way home. And that, until that changes, our tax base is what it is. That is what it is. 70% of it's driving up to Springfield. And it sucks. Because if that 70% was here, or even if half of that was here, instead of, what was it, like $3.1 million in tax revenue for 2021, we'd have double that, at least. And that's what you're looking for by raising it to 2.5 from 1.5. That concerns me because we're going to raise the taxes and it's still going to be a shortfall because everybody's still working up in Springfield. Everybody's still making that long drive and everybody else is working at the school. So where are all the good jobs where people can actually go out to lunch and spend an hour over at Piccolo or eat a burger at Bear's? There's not very many, are there? Because I'll tell you what, you can get seats there at lunchtime, Monday through Friday, just about anywhere. And that's a cold, hard fact. The other thing that I'm concerned with my last minute here is the general use fund. If we want this money to go for the police department and the parks, then why isn't it specifically for the parks and specifically for the police department. We have a problem in Nixa with getting good quality people here with good paying jobs because we can't afford to pay them. So why not be honest? Why not just throw off the blanket of niceness and say, hey, we need a 0.5% general use tax just so we can afford to run the city. And go with that. Everybody will vote for it. You'll get your money to fix Macaulay Park. You'll get your money for at least some of the police. You'll get your money to start fixing a lot of things and hiring a new planning and zoning department head. And then we can work on the police department and on the parks department with specific tax increase for a period of time. Because once a general use tax goes into effect, it's never going to change. It's never going to go back down. I would challenge anybody to show me in the history of the world of government wherever a general use tax went down. I may be wrong, but generally, that would be the exception and not the rule.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanders. And we'll leave open the public hearing.
Rich Lewis, Nixa, Missouri. So there's a lot to unpack on this tax. First of all, great study, cheap. Listen to his study, completely lays out what it needs to lay out. I have not heard it for the parks. I'm not saying there isn't one. I just haven't heard it for the parks. I would rather, instead of building new and shiny stuff, let's fix what we have. That should be of main importance to what Nixa has. If you go to a park and it looks like crap in the bathrooms, what's it gonna look like when we build a new park and everybody goes to the new shiny park? It's gonna get worse. That's history. Look at Springfield. They had to do a complete revitalization of their parks because they did exactly that. They built new, they built shiny, and they neglected what they already have. Then they spent money to go back and fix what they already have. I don't wanna see Nixa waste my money on that. Plain and simple. Let's fix what we have. Let's improve what we have. Let's get that foundation, and then we build. That being said, I also understand the need. Mr. Sanders is absolutely right. People drive to Springfield. Small businesses don't succeed here very often. It's because everybody's going to Springfield for every sporting event outside of Nixa schools. Every rec league. Nixa has a rec league. It does not compete with the size of Springfield's. Nixa has no traveling teams. Does not compete with Springfield. So if we want small businesses to survive and thrive, we've got to drive business locally. That means people getting out. I'm not saying New X Center, but you double the size of local recreational teams, more people out, more people eating. Bears gets filled up on those off hours. I understand that. So it's a juggling act. I also understand the law enforcement. I will never say no to that, to more police. It's my background, I understand it. But I also come from where the county ruled everything. And let me tell you, it scares me to death having a general tax. Because I've seen and been a part of those county commission meetings where county said, you know what, you're gonna get your money. And then nickel and dimed, and we ended up with less than 30% operating officers than what we needed. It needs to be specialized taxes for both the police department and the parks. You guys are good people. I have no issue with any of you. I don't doubt you for one bit. But when it comes down time to pay the bills and something's got to suffer, 99% of the time in cities all over the United States, the guys in the uniforms are the one that suffer. Do we have the officers that we needed 3 years ago? 5 years ago? Just prove my point. So it needs to be specialized, so we can't draw from general fund. It's happened, it happens every day. I'm not talking just Nixa, Ozark, Christian County, every single city in Christian County. I've been there, I've seen it happen. Needs to be specialized taxes. As far as looking, excuse the language, badass and scary, I agree with that police department, but community policing, you know, you have to look nice and stuff like that. That being said, we need a new building, because how your police department looks is generally how the public will see your city. That includes new businesses coming in. That includes the big businesses that will bring in more work for people to work here on. Ron's right. Working in Nixa, you don't get paid what you should. You start bringing in big businesses, you start bringing in more pay. You also create potential for small businesses to be more successful because people are shopping locally. So, good luck on the tax. Depends on what it looks like at the end of it, on whether I'll vote for it or not. But general taxes, we need to get away from that. And just saying, oh, it's a tax for parks and we're gonna do this, I wanna see itemized. I wanna see 20,000 for this, 50,000 for this, 102,000 for this. Show me where my money's going. Because at the end of the day, we're not seeing it, especially in our parks. And our parks are great. I'm not putting our parks down. But 50% of a 1% increase going to parks, I need to understand where it's going to. So does the rest of Nixa. So itemize, and I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll leave the public hearing open. And close the public hearing. Yeah, Mr. Liu, I wish it was possible to do that. The problem is that it's against state law for us to have a public safety or police tax, so we can't do a specified tax. And so we've tried a couple of times to get that changed, but hasn't made it through the legislature, so that's a limitation that's given on cities that they're not allowed to do that, so that's why we have to do it as a general tax. We could have separated this and done a separate parks tax. Kind of going back to what the gentleman in the back had talked about, is that, we're behind. So that, I think Ron's 100% right. It'd be nice if we could just come out and say, hey, this is just really to pay Matt's maintenance people and to pay chiefs, police officers what they deserve to be paid, to be able to have a planning and zoning department, or to pay any of our other staff what they're worth. But those are limitations that are put on us by the budget that we have. So we have to do that. So we talk a lot about how many open maintenance recs do you currently have, Matt? So Matt, anybody? What? Oh, did you get a new one? Oh, good, yeah. So yeah, a lot of the problems you see currently with the parks, at least over the last couple of years, are the same thing you see in every business. It's impossible to get employees to work at what we are able to pay them, and that's definitely a point. If we were paying $25 an hour, I bet you get all kinds of people to apply for maintenance, but that's not how our system is set up. So, so we're doing the best we can with the resources we have today. If we have additional resources, then some of that, I'm sure, we'll be able to change as well, along with being able to afford more officers and increase the pay for those officers, as we've done over the last several years as well. And then the other thing you see is that in that same 10-year time period we're talking about, Republic has had 4 new taxes put in place. And so we talk a lot about, Republic, they got all this great stuff. They got all these new things. They got brand new, they're building a brand new set of ball fields. They're doing a lot of things because their public has invested in their community. And so that's what we're really trying to give our community an opportunity to do, is to invest in our community so that we can continue to grow and continue to be that great place where everyone wants to come and live here in Nixa.
Yep, Mayor, also if I might, just for clarification, because I know it's came up a couple of times, although this is a general fund sales tax, this is earmarked for public safety and parks. So this additional 1 cent has to be spent on parks and police, pretty much for eternity, as long as it's in place. So I just wanted to make sure that's, although it's not a public safety tax, that 1 cent has to be spent, that additional 1 cent has to be spent on those 2 departments.
And it'll be on this council, on people who are involved like Mr. Sanders, who watch these things to make sure that continues to happen. Any other discussion?
Yes.
What you got, Ms. Graham?
I'm an old person, and I've probably lived here longer than many of you have ever been around. I know I'm older than Brian, because he's one of my students. But we moved here in 1976, a month before my daughter was born. At that time, there was a park in Nixa, which is now called Rotary Park. It had a large baseball diamond, 2 smaller diamonds, a water fountain, a pavilion, some playground equipment, and a bathroom. Guess what Rotary Park still has? Exact same thing. We've updated a few things, but it's the exact same park, except it has a name now. They finally built the X Center. I was so excited about it because now you had a basketball court for people to play on. You had facilities upstairs for people to do things, tons of activities for kids to do. And if you're ever there after school, like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it is packed. And on weekends, you can't find a parking space. We talked about putting an indoor pool in, but you're talking at least $16 million, and that's something we can't burden our people with. But at one point in time, where this room sits is where the police department was. And then they built the department over there. And it has done well for years, but they are, Officer Forgey's office is in a closet. It is maxed out. There is no more room for them to put people, and we need more people. The study we did years ago said that we needed a minimum of 5 parks for our population, and that was at least almost 10 years ago. We have 2 parks. It's not enough. We have 24,000 residents that we're cramming into this little bitty park. Matt runs a baseball program with 900 kids on those 3 little ball fields out there. And it's terrible. And when they do the basketball courts inside, I don't know how you do it. I don't. They do an amazing job for the money that we get them because Matt is given this much money and it's all he has to use. When it's gone, it's gone. So if there's upkeep that's gone by the wayside, it's gone by the wayside because you have to put it in places where it's most important. It's been 25 years since we had a last sales tax increase. 25 years, folks. We have the lowest sales tax of anybody in this area. Even with a 1-cent sales tax on top of it, we add it to it, we're still going to be lower than almost, I think, everybody around here. Because many of them have other taxes added on top, like Minnesota Republic has done for since then. Branson has an 11% sales tax. 11%. When I go to Branson, I don't buy anything. I'll come back home and shop here because that's a lot, but they have all the tourism. You have to realize that this sales tax is not going to affect just we that live here. It's going to affect everybody that drives through here and buys something at any of our stores on their way to the lake or on their way to Springfield. We have more people shopping in town now than we used to. I've been a liaison for the Parks Department and for the Police Department. So they are the 2 things that are in my heart. We need more officers, and they do such an amazing, amazing job protecting our city. If you've not been through the Citizens Police Academy, which is going on right now, do it next year. You'll learn an awful lot about how our department works. If you're not involved with the Parks Department, just go over there and sit sometime and see all the activity that is going on, that we ask them to utilize 1 full basketball court for everything that they have over there. And we just added pickleball because people were demanding it. We need more space for all these activities. If you know the thing in if you build it, they will come, Field of Dreams, I firmly believe in that. If you build it, it will get utilized. People will go, look at this is great. We can bring our kids here, we can have teams here, we can have those traveling teams, we can do all sorts of things there that they don't have the room for over there. Not only that, hopefully it would be built on this side of town because we don't have either of these parks on the south side of town or the west side of town. You want to drive some business over here? Put something over here to it. And I don't know where, but I've got a spot picked out. When I look at it and I go, it's going to cost me a whole $1 if I spend $100 on something, a whole $1 extra. That to me is nothing. I'm not a coffee drinker, but when I see people spend $5 for a cup of coffee, I'm going, and you won't spend even a penny to add something to our Parks Department? That's something I really have a hard time processing, because to me, those are things that are very, very important and very, very necessary. I hope you all take some time to really look through this and see what it's going to be. I realize it is going to be split between the parks and the police. It's not going to go anywhere else. But what Matt can do with that and what the chief can do with that, it's going to be phenomenal. And I wish you all would jump on this wagon and help us get this going, because we tried a few years ago to get a half-cent sales tax, and it failed by 6 votes because people heard the word tax and they went, bad word. It's not what it is. You know, in Ozark, they have a really nice rec center over there. When they built it, it was very nice. But they found out a year later, when they had to do maintenance and take care of everything, that they didn't have a dedicated parks tax. They had no money to do maintenance on it or even upkeep on it. They passed a dedicated park tax at that time to keep that thing rolling along and keep it available. Republic is building something else with their water park. They're adding to it. But like you said, they've got a tax put on that. It takes care of those things. We don't have that on any of our stuff. We have a general sales tax, and that's what we use. So if we add to this 1 penny, look what we can do with it. I'm done.
Thank you,
Sorry.
Ms. Grant. I think you brought up a very important point about also, we talk about the 24,000 people that live in Nixa. This tax, this tax, I don't know good term, gives everyone in the Nixa region the opportunity to support Nixa. So we have kids, from Highlandville or Spokane or Clever or, even Ozark that are involved in our athletic programs at the parks. So this way, it allows those families who also shop here. We have probably over 60,000 people who shop here on a monthly or weekly basis. So it allows all of those people to contribute to our growth and to pay for all those things and to help out with things like Mr. Belcher's traffic problems, so we can build additional roads and things so that we can do that, and to support things like economic development and trails. One of the things maybe it was a bad thing on my part, was I told Jimmy not to include things that we were already doing on this, because we've done that in the past, and I think it bit us. So we are working on other projects. We are rebuilding the park at Macaulay Park. We are working on trails at the Century Farm. We are working on other connective trails across the city. So we're working on other projects. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can do more than one thing. But we wanted to say these are additional things that we know we can fund along with improvements to our current services based off of this type of tax. And the other thing, what was the other thing I was going to say? It's one of Mr. Lewis's points, but I can't remember what it was now. It's really good. Maybe I'll think of it.
What's our sales tax going to be? Our sales tax now is 4.75 something?
That's 7.475 total.
Oh, okay, so, but it'll go up, but still it's going to be lower than,
Yeah, City of Nixa's portion of that is 1% general fund, half a cent for transportation. And just for transparency, I want to make sure, I mentioned earlier that, in the ballot language, it will specify that this additional 1 cent is for parks and public safety, which will be police. But complete transparency, as we move forward over the years, that will help alleviate the additional burden on the rest of the general sales tax, which will help us continue to do these projects we're doing, like the future sidewalks, trails, and those type of things. So just want to make sure that was clarified.
That's what it was. Mr. Lewis had said that in his experience, it was always police that was the kind of where the buck stopped. If you ran out of money, it was the officers that you didn't get. And I think we've been very good, at least on my time on council, that not being the case, is that we always take it from Matt. We just so that's why it took us 10 years to save the $1 million that we used to repair Macaulay Park. So we have invested, like I said, 108% of our annual sales tax goes to the police department budget. And so I think that's something we've had the entire time I've been here, along with improvements in equipment and other things that we've been able to do for the police. And I think this is just another way that we can invest in that to keep us one of the safest cities in Missouri.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, Darlene, you misspoke with 25 years. I think it's 35 years. It was 1987.
I'm sorry, I'm not a math person.
So I was not
How old were
alive.
you?
I'm 27, so I was not alive when it happened. But like Mr. Lewis, when you said that we, good job. With Mr. Lewis, when you said that we do nickel and dime the police generally when things get tough, we have invested, I think we've raised police salaries 4 times in lieu of getting new officers, because we've had to make that balance. And so do we want to keep the officers that we have, which are fantastic officers, or do we want to hire more officers at a wage that they'll just get the training here and leave? And that's really what we had to fight. But now we're at a point where, since we've gotten that pay, we've kept those officers, we've trained them, they're fantastic. We've invested in them. It's time to invest in getting more officers at the rate that we chose to increase salaries at. So yeah, just kind of want to say that.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion to approve or any other discussion.
I make the motion.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Justin Orr,
Yes.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Darlene Graham,
Yes.
Amy Hoekstra,
Yes.
Sean Lucas.
Yes.
Go back to my. All right. And we'll move on to our resolution.
Resolution number 2022-086, a resolution of the Council of the City of Nixa authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with USIC Locating Services Incorporated for utility locating services.
Mayor and council, good evening. As discussed last fall during budget discussions, staff seeks to end our internal utility locating services for Nixa Utilities and contract those services to a highly qualified company. The passage of the resolution that's in front of you would authorize the city administrator to execute a contract with Utility Services Incorporated, Utility Locating Services Incorporated, I'm sorry. Driven mainly by the 1976 Natural Gas Safety Act, utility locating for excavators is state law here in Missouri. Since that time, Nixa has always had at least a partial person. They started out using like a meter reader and doing some locating. And of course, 1976, there wasn't a lot to locate, but as we've grown over time, that has turned into a full-time person in the early 2000s. Today, it's a full-time person plus overtime plus supplementing a couple other personnel several days a week for probably a little over a year now. We've been in that situation. So to look at, one of the things we looked at doing in the budget was we of course asked for allocation to be able to hire another person and the equipment to make that happen. The other thing that we wanted to look at was contracting the service and see if it would be cost effective over time. Initially in the first year, it will probably be a little higher as far as the operations and maintenance expense. However, we'll save on purchasing additional truck and the locating equipment and all of the other stuff. So, well, if we were to contract this out, we also wouldn't have to lay off an employee. We have an opening in an inspector position where we could move that person to, so we wouldn't have to just lay somebody off if we contracted this out. And at the end of the day, we'll be able to support the inspection side much better. We'll have a good company that can do the locating. We still have our locator on hand in case we happen to need them for something. And at the same time, we'll be able to over time save some money, especially on the capital cost. The attached contract has a per locate cost, as well as a cost for larger locates that go over 30 minutes. So say, like on one of these big road projects where they're out and they're locating several blocks at a time and it takes them a little bit longer time. That uses instead of a flat fee for a single locate, they charge on a rate basis, on a per hour rate basis. And so it lays that out, as well as an emergency locate. Just quickly, there's a regular locate, which has to be done within 3 days, and then there's also an elevated emergency locate. Say Spire had a natural gas leak, or we had a water leak, we had to get in there right then. There's a 2-hour response time for those locates. So there's a piece for that as well. The agreement is our typical standard length of time. It's a 3-year agreement with 2 optional 1-year extensions. Other than that, it's fairly straightforward as far as the contract goes. Staff recommends passage of the resolution. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer anything you might have.
So have you talked to this individual that currently has the locating job and he or she wants to move over to that other position?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. It's actually it's a good fit because he's out locating. He's very familiar with utilities, obviously, and a lot of that inspection work is the inspection of utilities, the locations of them, making sure they're in the right places and those types of things.
Do you have an idea of what the overall cost of this is on an annual basis?
I put together a guess based on some of the more recent number of locates we've had. We're averaging around 400 locates. We've had a couple of months where we've had over 500. That's where we really start getting into trouble meeting that 3-day deadline. I'm estimating this to be right around $100,000 a year. So when I had mentioned back in budget time, we were looking at adding a locator and adding an inspector. It's not a complete wash at this point, but by the time you take the additional capital equipment we would have to buy, it pretty well levels out. So it'll be a little more expensive on the maintenance side, but less on the capital side. Of the 3 utilities, this gets split across 3 different utility departments.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Doug.
Yep.
And we'll open up public hearing. And close the public hearing. I do like outsourcing things, especially things that have to be somewhat seasonal, right? It's like in the spring and summer, you get more locates for construction than you would in the winters.
There's a little bit of a drawdown in the winter. A lot of the warm winters we've had recently, that hasn't been the case. but-
True. Any other discussion? Motion to approve?
So made. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we will take a very short recess before Mr. Orff's presentation. Let me bring my hand. I think it's all right. No sound? Oh, there we go. I got sound.
Right.
Mr. Orff.
Hi. So I figured for my my last council meeting, I'd actually do my liaison report. So as you all know, I'm the liaison for administration, or for the administration department, which includes working with Jimmy, our city administrator, Cindy Robbins, our assistant city administrator, Becca Coffey, our city clerk, Nick Woodman, our city attorney, and Drew Douglas, our director of communications. So it covers quite a few areas and quite a few members of staff. But because there's so much going on in administration, I just kind of wanted to focus on two of our departments, which is working with Nick Woodman, our city attorney, and Drew Douglas, our director of communications. So with Nick Woodman, we primarily focused on how the move of the municipal court to the county was going, because I was just curious on an update there. I did want to provide just a brief history of the court. So as a refresher, the Office of State Courts Administrators, or OSCA, conducted an audit of our municipal court. Their interpretation of Supreme Court Rule 37 caused some areas of concern for us, namely that our judge would have full control over our financial processes and not our city administration. This would mean that a part-time judge and court clerks would be the only ones on the bank account and would not be subject to internal control policies that provide checks and balances for all our financial transactions within that department. Another issue that arose is that OSCA kind of deemed that only the judge could have supervision over court staff, which caused issues with city administration being able to discipline and enforce employment code, or be able to address hostile workplace environment claims if they ever arose. So in the end, consolidation reduced our risk, it reduced our liability, and ended up saving the city money by consolidating with the county, which made sense to do. So now that the court has moved over to the county, there are actually some beneficial things that are happening. So unlike before, with our municipal court, everything is now electronically filed, which provides Mr. Woodman an immediate notice the moment something is filed. With our municipal court previously, things would get faxed to our municipal court, and so it wasn't always a guarantee that our attorney would receive notices of the fax prior to the court case appearing on the docket. With the county, there's an online portal for individuals to pay fines, which we didn't have here, and so that allows for payment of violations to be collected more efficiently. Court over there happens once a month, yet the docket moves pretty quickly because they have the efficiency of the county court behind them. This also frees up our police, as they are no longer having to transfer prisoners over to our city court or act as a bailiff, which would sometimes take an officer off the road. So while these are all awesome things, there is one main con for moving the court over. So unlike with our municipal court, Mr. Woodman does not have the flexibility to work directly with a person who violated a city ordinance on the spot, and must make an offer, have an offer ready prior to a court occurring. So with that, an offer, as an example, is in like a speeding violation would be a 6-month probationary period for first-time offenders instead of a fine, and no points placed against the license. So they can choose to pay that fine, and they then have those points put on it, but Nick likes to work with them and have those offers ready that can kind of commute that a little bit. So however, a full-time paralegal does help with this, as they're able to get the offers put together well in advance of the meetings, and that frees up, so it doesn't hinder the process too much. So overall, moving the court to the county has been beneficial. It's been more efficient at getting people to settle the cases, more efficient at getting people to pay their fines and collect fines. So while it may be more work up front, our paralegal helps address these issues, which allows our attorney more time to focus on other issues like reviewing our ordinances, researching case law, and keeping our city out of trouble. So Mr. Woodman is doing quite a few different things, but I was mainly curious about the court process. That was what we talked about. After I met with Nick, I went over to Drew Douglas's office, where I got a very in-depth look of the communications department. So before I really go into that, I like looking at data, so I wanted to include a slide of our metrics. I'm not going to read all of that to you, but as you can see, Facebook is primarily the way to reach the most people in Nixa. The city averages about 27 posts per month on Facebook, and each post reaches about 3,205 people. Another important thing to see is that our emails are being read by the majority of people who receive them, so with 50% or above seeing them, and we have a very low unsubscribe rate of about 10 to 14 accounts per month. And these are monthly averages for 2022, so they vary per month. We also discussed the number of projects that the department is focusing on. So now that council has passed the new seal and Mr. Lyles has approved the logos and the brand style guide, the implementation starts, which is putting everything together on our documents. The website, business cards, signs and banners, and so much more. So now that we will start to see the redesigns as a family of brands, which over time will help separate us from the schools and the fire department. Interestingly enough, as I was meeting with Drew, he received a phone call from a reporter trying to coordinate with the public information officer for the fire department. So even though reporters sometimes struggle to understand that there's a separation of these government entities, and having these different logos kind of helps separate that just on a face value. So the rebrand helps with that, and it also helps with the implementation of our strategic plan. We're also working on our website redesign. So the current website is going away in favor of a new website that, from what I've seen, looks fantastic. It'll be more efficient and will be very focused on providing a transparent government with a user-friendly interface. With the website, people will be able to search projects that are going on in the city, watch how the projects are moving forward through completion, and see where they're at in that process. There will also be interactive maps, which, as someone who works in the engineering field, I love that, because I use the Springfield and Republic interactive maps all the time to get all kinds of data. The beta for the website will go live sometime in mid-September, which will allow for testing and tweaking before it launches sometime before October 1st. Later on, as we get our BS&A implemented into the website, it'll kind of make things more efficient as it ties our payment portals together. So now that we have this new website, we need some awesome photos from our community to showcase on it. So the next thing they're going to do is host a community-wide photo contest, which will gather high-quality images from community members that we then place on the website and on print materials where appropriate. So also speaking of community contests, council elected to get community input on the next flag instead of choosing one of the proposed designs. So that is something that will start soon, and hopefully you all will get some fantastic designs to choose from. Finally, there will be a voter education push regarding the sales tax ballot issue, which we just put on the ballot. So basically they will be explaining exactly what a yes vote would do and also what a no vote would do. It will stick to the facts and explain why the city administrator proposed exactly what he did propose to bring this up. So you've also seen like some of this campaign already on Facebook posts that have highlighted the lack of space in our existing police building and the needs of our police and our parks. So while these are some of the major projects, these are no way everything that the communications department is working on. Mr. Douglas provided me with a memo of everything, and it's like 10 pages long. So if you want to talk to him and have some time, I'm sure he would be more than happy to meet with you on it. Finally, before I end my presentation, I did want to discuss the staffing of the communications department. So you all know Drew, he's our director of communications. You can see he does a lot of things. He does quite a bit. He stays super busy, and he has to juggle all the unpredictable things that may pop up day to day with being in part of communications. Macy does a fantastic job at managing the social media the city puts out, which, as you saw earlier, is quite a bit. She also helps update the website content. She tracks data and helps Drew with any issues that may arise. Michaela Ford is staying on with the city for the fall after she's been offered a paid internship. So she'll be working on getting all the visuals put together under the new brand. So this will include new business cards, document templates, signs and banner designs, a new resident guide, the 2022 guide to city finances, and any job opening brochures that we may have. She graduates in December, so Drew's first priority for staffing would be to create a full-time position for graphic design at the start of 2023 if our budget allows. And then I also have a few question marks up there, and that's because the rest of council, and since the rest of council and staff starts the budgetary process, I want to bring up the potential for a videographer. who would produce video content for police, parks, public works, city utilities, pretty much any department that needs them. And they would create video recaps of the news, upcoming events, educational videos about city processes, and pretty much anything. So depending on how the budgetary process goes, if these two positions are feasible, then they would like to have that at least considered by the rest of council. So yeah, any questions?
Any questions?
No? Okay.
Good job, Mr.
All right.
Orr. Thank you very much.
Yay.
Lights went out, time's over.
All right.
Good one to end on.
I think that was it, right? Anything else from staff?
I have something. If you'll please mark your calendars, we have scheduled the budget work session for council for Thursday, October 20th. 6 o'clock, dinner will be provided.
October what?
October what?
October 20th,
October 20th.
6 p.m. It's a Thursday.
Well, I have something.
Yeah.
I would just like to thank, well, Cindy and Becca and everyone else who were involved in the multicultural event, the planning of it. That was really cool. There was a lot of people out there. Rich is already gone, but I know he was excited about the taco trucks. No, I thought it was a really great event, and looking forward to making it even bigger next year. You guys did awesome.
Yep. That was very good. Anything else? Along the same lines, I want to propose that we move the first September meeting to the, whatever day that would be, which would be to the 19th from the 12th. Most of staff will be at the MML conference. Yes, I want to move the 12th to the 19th. Move the 12th to the 19th.
Unless Doug wants to run the entire meeting.
I don't think it's beneficial for anybody.
You know, we should let Chief do it.
Yeah, here you go.
He hasn't had to do it.
And then I also asked Becca to put out the notice to accept letters of interest for Mr. Orff's District 3 seat, which we will accept through the 12th or 13th, did we decide? The 12th, and then we will swear in that new member on the 19th. And we will have a going away party for Mr. Orff, making him come back one more time.
Yeah.
Anything else from council?
She didn't dance with him, but all the entertainers were really, really good at the thing.
I was sick that day, sorry, I couldn't make it. There we go. All right, anything else? Peterson.
I move that City Council go into closed session under Section 610-021-1 RSMO so that council may discuss legal actions, causes of action, and confidential and privileged communications with their attorney. I also move that this closed session, records related thereto, and any votes taken by the council during this session shall be closed under Section 610-021 RSMO, and that the City Council shall stand adjourned after the closed session.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Sean Lucas,
Yes.
Justin Orff,
Yes.
Jared Giddens,
Yes.
Aaron Peterson,
Yes.
Johnny Graham,
Yes.
Amy Hoekstra.
Yes.